Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything gonna be all right this morning. Oh, yeah.
And we're off. We're off.
Now, when
We're
I was
back.
a young boy,
We're on. We're off. Hot. We're
at the age
cold.
of 5,
It is Gridiron 360. We're talking a little more fantasy football. I'm Bill. I got Dave with me. We're going into our daily fantasy segment. As always, we will give you in this segment two high-end, high-priced guys and two low-end, low-priced guys that we are going to play on FanDuel's main slate for daily fantasy this week. That's all the Sunday matchups in the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock time slates. And we'll also go through and build a lineup that we'll actually play. I do want to start out, my friend Dave, taking a look at my historicals from last week, because I do think we did okay. And I know with the 4 we played, at least 3, we paid out. We paid out in it, and depending on what game you played, if you played a game with less people involved, maybe higher priced, you might have paid out even more. But we kind of doubled up. I think it was a $2, was it? A $2 play?
Yes.
And no, I'm sorry, it was a $1.
Or was that the $1?
Yeah, well, I had a $1 and I won 3, so I 3 times it. But like I said, if you had played one of the higher price games with less people involved, we scored out at a 165.8 with the full lineup we built. Now, we had our 4 that we went with was Josh Jacobs, was Kenny Golladay. Those were our high-priced receiver, running back and receiver, respectively. And then Latavius Murray and Kenny Stills as our low-priced running back and receiver, respectively. Due to the news that Josh Jacobs, even though he did end up playing with a lighter workload than we've seen in the past several weeks, but due to the news that he had a shoulder thing, he sat out of practice most of the week, he was banged up, we put it out there on the socials about a quick revision on that. We switched from Jacobs to Leonard Fournette, which was a good play, and we had T.Y. Hilton as our other receiver, and we switched that to DK Metcalf, which was also a good play. So out of the 4, the Leonard Fournette play on FanDuel got you 17.1 points. The DK Metcalf play did 14.8. Golladay had a great day. He was our high-profile guy. It was the image we used for the podcast, and he did not disappoint with 6 receptions, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did fumble the ball, but he had 25.3 points, and where we faltered a little bit was with Kenny Stills with only 3 receptions, 22 yards, and 3.7. It was not bad.
Nope.
Not a bad call.
No, overall, you're going to see we well hit the 2 plus the times as a total of the players that that we expected. So that's kind of what you want to do. You understand with the low end, the reason why you take the low end is it lets you go after high end players while still balancing out the rest of your roster. So, you kind of sometimes have to take it as an overall. We love to hit the home runs with the low end guys all the time. But the real key is, did it allow us to go have a balanced roster and allow us to go get the big-time players that we think are going to score on the high end for running back and receiver? And that definitely happened.
Yeah, I mean, so between those 4 guys, it was a total of 60.9 points, right? And so then you have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, for. Oh, I'm sorry. I said DK Metcalf at the 14.8. He was not one of the core.
Core, right.
The other one was Latavius Murray, who blew up. So let me add that up again. Why don't you add it up for me? We have Latavius came in with a 32.2. Stills with a measly 3.7. Galladay with a nice 25.3. And Fournette with 17.1.
78.3.
That's pretty darn solid.
Yep.
Those four guys, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other positions to fill. And those four guys got you almost half of the points.
Yep.
So very nice performance. Now, with the overall lineup, when we built it out, we ended up putting Stafford in, who had a good day, 342 yards, 3 TDs, 1 pick, came out to 24.38. Barkley, 19 for 64. He had on the ground, he had 8 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown, 24.3. Very nice there. As we said, Metcalf, 14.8. He only had 3 receptions for 13 yards, but 2 of those 3 receptions were touchdowns. TJ Hawkinson let us down again. We played him with a little stack with Stafford, Galladay, and Hawkinson. He only had 1 reception for 21. That was 2.6. That wasn't such a great play. But our play of the Patriots defense worked out. They only allowed they scored a touchdown. They had a pick and 5 sacks, allowed 13 points, 21 points. That'll work. That was a total of 165.38, and probably, I mean, that was a dollar game. So if you're playing anything less, you shouldn't be playing, quite frankly. But
is there someone you know that plays less?
I think I've convinced him to stop doing that. And he's starting to see the returns.
Yep.
Okay, we do know what we're talking about when it comes to this stuff. We may not be super experts, but I've played it long enough, and we both know the college, the pro game, and these players to be able to make these predictions. So we've played seasonal fantasy long enough. So good. Nice. Let's try to get another win for the listeners this week, my friend.
All right. Before we get started on this, a little bit of a disclosure. We had to probably spend more time developing this lineup than we ever have. One of the things we really noticed about this one is it seems like the prices have really gone up on some players here. Where we have
especially the middle tier.
Yeah, the middle. Yeah, what I would have considered if I was to say, okay, here are some guys and where I think they should fit. We're probably low end, where I'm talking like $5,700 and south. We're running into the 6,000+ range. So we had to get really, really creative in the way that we did this. And again, we stuck with high-end, low-end running back and receivers, which we're going to start with. You know, we use the same formats we always use. One of the things, and we'll kind of get into this as we go, and I'll explain it a little more once we get to that player, or Bill will, but we kind of felt like with what we were doing and how we were pushing against the cap pretty hard on this one, that we almost had to have something we haven't had before, which is a sacrificial position. And we'll get into what that means and how that plays.
A lot of the matchups was just iffy, whether, where they are, when they are. Again, this is the 1 and the 4s, who's playing who. And a lot of the juicier matchups, well, first of all, they're not on this slate. There's a couple of them not on this slate. But the ones that are just not feeling it, or the price of the guy wasn't at the value, and I didn't know if the production would be there.
So where I want to go with that is we're going to go through this like we always do, and with some of the same logic. And
we'll give you some other guys that I think you could always swap in, and we'll build out the lineup. But other guys that are in potential good positions, and like we did last week, if for some reason one of these guys we find out might not play. Go to when we push the feed out on Facebook, we'll put it there in the comment section. Yeah,
and definitely trust your gut as you build beyond the 4. Again, you can trust your gut with the 4, but this is kind of one of those things where we really had to kind of dig deeper into the matchups to kind of make some tiebreakers and some decisions. And even the tiebreakers were tough for us on this one. Again, not to scare you off or anything like that, but just understand sometimes things are going to look this way. Again, we're doing the main slate, which is your 1 o'clock and your 4 o'clock games. So, we don't have access to the Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night games, as Bill just mentioned. So just wanted to give you that little precursor as we step into building this lineup to what it is. So, sir, where would you like to start?
Well, let's go ahead and start with the low end, and hopefully we remain consistent. I feel like week one we went with the low end last week. We started with the high end, but let's start with the low end because I like doing that in my lineups as well as going the other way. But this way you kind of see how much money you have to play with. But really to identify, some lower price guys where we say the Mendoza line is that 6,000. So underneath that, you're pretty good on the value. But find some guys that we might like or that, a few weeks in the flex, we were like, we loved and, see what we want to roll with.
Okay.
So let's start with the low end running back.
Okay.
Okay. Again, we want to look under $6,000. So as we started looking through, if you listen to our last cast on the seasonal, we were talking a little bit about the Denver running backs. And, I do believe that Royce Freeman's the guy that in this next game with this backup quarterback will get more of the workload. Okay. He comes in though again, this is another conundrum at 6,100, just over the line. So little concerned about that paying off in terms of value. It was somebody I looked at. Dave also brought up Devin Singletary coming off a pretty good week and going against a Washington team that, their defense hasn't been so great and they're 28th versus the rush. But again, he's at 6,100 too. It seemed a little high.
Yep.
I dropped down a little bit and was, I brought up the name Damian Williams. Kansas City with a game coming up against Minnesota. They're a pretty good defense. Mahomes may play, but if we're going to go with the assumption that it's more.
Yep.
And if it is more, because and honestly, I don't know if it might benefit. I think it benefits him more if it is more.
Yep.
Because Mahomes will be able to sling it all over the yard, whereas he is a good pass catching back. I don't want to say Sean McCoy is completely in the doghouse for a fumble, but we heard it today. He does hang that ball out there. He always has when he's running it. And
he's not near as elusive as he used to be, so he takes on more contact.
I'm wondering, and I've heard a lot of the fantasy experts, pundits, say that this back half of the year you may start to see more of the production out of Damian Williams that you might have expected when you drafted him, maybe, in the mid to late rounds in your draft, depending on how deep it was.
Sure.
For a potential blow-up season or a solid flex. The back half of the season, we may see leaning more of that. It just, based on the past several weeks, and again, I do believe he is better served in terms of fantasy value at this point, and from what I saw at the beginning, from the start of the season between Mahomes and Moore, that Moore he might have more value with Moore. But we weren't sold on it.
Yep.
And we were trying to hash out the numbers in terms of, worst case scenario, projected scores, looking at the matchups, looking at the defenses overall against the rush, against the pass. And we came down to another player also at $5,400 that we really liked, and that was Jamal Williams of the Green Bay Packers. Why do we like that, Dave?
All right, well, here's the thing with this. So let's just state the obvious. He's a number 2 back in the backfield with a starting running back who is been really lighting the league on fire, particularly over the last 4 to 5 games in Aaron Jones. So you kind of go, oh, okay, wait a minute here. We got a lead dog, and we got a lead dog that's really performing. But when you dig into this guy, this is kind of the interesting thing. He's at $5,400. His average fantasy points per game is 10.5. What I like about him is, other than 2 games, he has performed within a point of that at a minimum. So he's been consistently hitting these marks. In 2 out of the last 3 games, he's actually gone 17 points plus. He's got 5 touchdowns, which is pretty good for a backup running back. So he spells consistency with the opportunity to even go beyond that, and that's basically right around double your point value.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're telling me is that $5,400, if he can get me to 11 points, that's right there is double. And so really on his worst day since he's been back from that injury, did he have 11?
Yeah, he had the one game where I think it was the injury game was against Philadelphia, right? And that was a low game. But other than that, he has performed. 9.6 is his lowest point total. So here's the thing: is what we're looking at now is going with a running back like this, as opposed to getting over that 6,000 line, allows us to really look at the juicy matchups on the high end. So this is a guy where we feel like his floor is already very solid.
Yep,
very solid.
All right, so let's go low end wide receiver. And there were a few here that we considered that I think are, solid plays.
Yep, definitely agree.
So let's see here. Again, under $6,000, we talked about Hunter Renfrow. I love my man Hunter for Oakland. It's a good matchup against Detroit, who is 31 overall defensive rank, 31st, 32nd against the pass, and 26 against the rush. But you did say that their Slay may not play?
Yep, Slay and Walker both are possibly not to play. And I don't know that Slay, this is kind of the other interesting part. You take in that injury to Jalen Ramsey, when guys kind of get on that block and don't feel like they were treated well, and Slay was not coming across as very happy about even being on the block. Those injuries tend to be a little worse than injuries when you're not on the block.
Yeah. We also at 49, and how much was he? Hunter was 5,400. Oh, we were talking Hunter. Yeah. He's 5,400. Love what he did last week. I think there's way more production coming. I love slot guys this is only half a point PPR, but to get those, I'm just not sure it's there yet.
Yep.
Okay.
There's been no repeatability of what he did.
And even on the high end, I got to see, and it's not his fault, because if you look at his production, he's extremely efficient. If he isn't catching the ball 100% of the time, he's got one drop for whatever balls, except for the game against Chicago. But other than that, he was 3 for 4, 2 for 3, 2 for 3, 4 for 4. But that's the problem. I need to see Derek Carr getting him the ball more.
Yep.
Okay? And when I see that, then I'll feel a little bit better about it. We also went down on the low end at $4,900. Taylor Gabriel for Chicago against that Philly secondary.
Yep.
The problem is Trubisky getting him the ball.
Yep.
So, but what you're looking at that is for $4,900, he's got to get you 9-10 points. But he's boomer bust. It's
very boomer bust.
He's either going to blow up and have like a day that's going to be 20-plus points, could win you a league, or he'll put up 3 or 4.
Yeah, he's only played 5 games, because in the game where he blew up, he ended up getting a concussion at the end of that game. But he's had 3 games with 1 or 2 targets, and the max yards in those 3 games was 24 yards, no scores. All of his touchdowns came in 1 game. So again, what we're trying to do is make sure we get value out of this pick. And to me, I don't know if you'd agree, but I would say the floor is a little bit more important to me on this one, because I'm going, again, like you saw us with the receivers, like the people we picked on the high end last week exploded. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is to be able to maintain that 2-to-1 and also then be able to go for explosion on higher price guys.
Yeah, I mean, we for especially in the receiver category, we were also, as we talked about Slay. So, I mean, we did analyze the secondary wide receiver cornerback matchups or potential matchups that we would project. Went on each team's site and make sure, see who was in, who was out. from a secondary perspective.
Yep.
And also looked at these guys' production in terms of their yards, tried to average it out, their targets. A lot on that. A lot on the targets, and then from that we back down to receptions, and hopefully, if it's a guy that's catching 50% or less of his balls, we probably bounce from him.
Sure.
Because it's too risky. So where'd we head?
So we went with Pittsburgh's receiver, Deontay Johnson, at $5,000. And here's kind of the thing that we liked about this. One, and I'll admit, I want to call it recency bias, but certainly what I like to see, this is a guy that, started off the season a little bit slow, but in 4 weeks prior to this, had 6 targets for 6 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. We're getting into the, Mason Rudolph. Sorry, stumbling on his name. Mason Rudolph era here. And this is their backup quarterback, probably seeing snaps, especially in preseason, and then, obviously probably somewhat in practice with this guy. So it looked like there was a little bit of a rapport there. Then he was targeted 8 times against Baltimore. He had 5 receptions, only 27 yards. Wasn't a great game for Pittsburgh offensively. It was also, I believe, the game where Rudolph got hurt too as well.
Yep.
The next game it went down deep because they had the third-string quarterback in that game, and so he only had 2 receptions for 14 yards. So Mason Rudolph comes back, and he bounces back to 7 targets, 5 receptions, 84 yards, and did get a score. You could tell in that offense, even though and this is a good part, they went to Smith-Schuster in this game against Miami, but they also found this kid, and he was really looking for him and able to make a connection. So the viability of this guy at 5,000 in those games with Mason Rudolph where he played consistently, his lowest point total was 13.3 points. So you're already 2.5 times your value right there. And then he's had a 14.7 and a 16.9 in those games. So,
when did Mason Rudolph come in? Was that week 3? Week 3 that they played San Francisco?
Yeah, I believe it was a Seattle game where Roethlisberger went down.
Okay, so here's the game-by-game snap count since Mason Rudolph's played from game 3 to present.
Yep.
This is the snap count and percentage of snaps. So game 3 against San Francisco, he played 42 snaps. That was 79.2% of the offensive snap plays. The next game 4 against Cincinnati, he played 37 snaps, 63.8% of the offensive plays. The next game against Baltimore, he played 53 snaps, 91.4% of the offensive plays. Next game against the Chargers, 41 snaps, 69.5% of the plays. And actually last week, 34 snaps, 44.2%. So that was the lowest. And he still had a pretty decent day.
Yep.
Last week. Now, I wouldn't project it to go. I would project it to go up back towards the 60% this week as, they're going to play Indianapolis, who, they could score 2. Indianapolis's defense is ranked 15th overall. They're 15th versus the pass, 20th versus the rush. So they're not bad.
Yep.
But I also think being the fact that they're kind of, one team above the half point above average for the whole NFL in the pass, in my mind, that means that they'll probably devote most of their attention to who?
Juju
Smith-Schuster, which leaves our man Deontay Johnson in one-on-one coverage, and he's proven to produce.
Yep.
Look, this is an offense when they have that number 1 and a really solid number 2. That number 2, a la Juju when Antonio was around, produced. Before Juju, they had Emmanuel Sanders with Antonio Brown. So it's just kind of that philosophy that you see in Pittsburgh. And again, we also mentioned in the other cast, we don't know what's to come of Connor and of Benny Snell. So if Jalen Samuels goes, who knows? the ball, he might get a little extra bump in his work.
Yeah, and he's played against the best defense in the NFL in San Francisco and the worst defense in Cincinnati, a bad defense in Miami. And then he's played some middling defenses. The thing I like the most, and this has just been a reality, the person who's, especially with Mason Rudolph, which is what I'm looking at, but even without Mason Rudolph, the person that's actually seen their numbers decline the most against tougher teams has actually been Juju, not him.
Correct.
He continues to maintain. So that's kind of where we feel solid. And again, going back to that good floor value for these guys is critical. And we believe we hit on this with this one.
We calculated it out to roughly a 10-point day on the low end.
Yep.
Okay. So, and at $5,000, there you go.
There's
two
your 2
times
to
the
1.
value. So, but with a floor that could easily be above that. Very high percentage that he could go over 10 points. May not go to 20 plus, but he could definitely get you above that.
Yep.
And again, at $5,000, we love it. All right, let's go to high-end running back, wide receiver. Why don't you start us off with the running back?
All right. We, certainly now, because we were frugal with our running back, it opened up really everybody. So we kind of, the first thing we want to do is we want to look at top 5-6 running backs and see who do we love. So you got to match up with Christian.
Hubba, who do you love?
You got to match up with Christian McCaffrey. Obviously an MVP type candidate right now with the way that he's playing. He's going against a Tennessee defense that, is not terrible. So,
and he's going to get his, but how much money is
But
he?
he's $9,700.
He's the highest.
Okay.
So that's a lot.
And
so he has to get you 20 points, which he could do. But that also limits the amount of money you have to spend elsewhere.
Yeah, and mind you, he's limited this week in practice. Got a knee injury. Not saying that it'll keep him out, but that certainly plays into this scenario. So, I guess the point is Christian McCaffrey, good play. Just there's some question there. So we kind of ran through the list. There's guys on here like Chris Carson. Chris Carson's going against one of the better run defenses, even though they are bad in the passing side. And surprisingly, we're a little surprised by the performance of Chris Carson. We expected a lot more out of him against the Atlanta Falcons last week. Didn't quite play out that way. So,
and another thing we thought about in this game is, they're playing the Bucs. Bucs have a good run D. They don't have their secondary is where they fall short.
Yep.
It really holds them back. We even looked at Jameis as we build the full lineup as a potential quarterback just because it feels like it could be one of those weeks to me.
Yep.
But whether it is or it isn't, they don't have a run game in Tampa Bay. And so all they're going to do is throw the ball. And more than likely, they're not going to go, I anticipate this to be more of a game. I don't know what the line is. We'll have to look at that in the NFL preview. But, just for that, and that alone, I feel like Russell Wilson might be more involved throwing the ball and running the ball, but the backs may suffer as a result.
Yep. So you got guys out there. You got Nick Chubb going up against Denver.
Denver's, I liked him a lot.
Yeah, it's not a bad play. He was playing against a middle pack defense in Denver. There's certainly going to be some interesting play in this with the quarterback coming in, and if this game gets out of hand, does that play to Chubb's benefit? So that was always there. But then again, you always have the concern of the Cleveland offensive scheme and how they continue to do things that are a little bit baffling, especially in their passing game, and just given a chance to have it go off. So, with Chubb, well, I guess I just want to say that this was a play that we like. We believe in a guy like that. It's
I
a good
believed
matchup.
in it with Flacco there. And I think taking him out and this other joker they're bringing in, I think that boosts his value even more. So we really liked him.
Yeah.
I liked him.
And then you get to Aaron Jones, which is definitely a solid play. But remember, we've already gone Jamal Williams, so we didn't want to stack the backfield with all Green Bay.
And that said, you could do that.
Yes.
Especially in big tournaments and that you play on FanDuel. If you do a big tournament, it could be very contrarian to stack two backs like that. But as you've seen, they've produced, so it could work out.
And that's again, remember the reason why we gave for Jamal Williams, in spite of Aaron Jones's production. But we came back and we really looked at it, and we liked Dalvin Cook. And obviously, Dalvin Cook has been running great, been catching the ball great. He's healthy, he's crisp, he's scoring touchdowns. So there's nothing really not to like about his game. But in particular, looking at the matchup, playing Kansas City, this is a team that can be run on. Certainly, I mean, obviously, Green Bay was able to move the ball down the field on them pretty well. But the thing about that we like comes back to what Minnesota did. Last week against Washington, everybody said this is a Dalvin Cook game, it's a Dalvin Cook game. Well, most NFL teams, when they know that, play against that, and so therefore the matchup doesn't prove to be as juicy as it does. In this instance, Minnesota did that. And again, remember, they spent, 3 weeks in a row passing the ball like crazy. I mean, Diggs and Thielen, Diggs in particular. Cousins has been having a good game and had a good game last week. I think he only missed 3 passes and still threw for 300 yards. He didn't get any scores. This game makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, one, because the strength of Kansas City is in their offense, particularly in their passing game, and running the ball will keep them off the field. But the great part about Dalvin Cook is he can run and he can catch. And last week I think he had 160 yards total of offense, caught 70-something in passing, and I think had almost 100 yards in rushing. So very balanced, but also Minnesota kind of doing what they do and saying, this is how we're going to run our team, just leaves Cook in such a golden position in this aspect that even though at $9,000 he is the second highest priced running back and certainly has cost more than Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb that we mentioned, we just believe this is so juicy. I think 3 times the value is easily in range with him against this team and the play design. So we went with Dalvin Cook. And again, that's that Jamal Williams. We're making that trade-off of, and just trying to get value out of the points to make sure that our salary cap is able to be met. But it allows us to go and get someone like this that we believe can really go off in this matchup.
Right. So we slotted Dal in as our high-end running back at $9,000. So now we're going to go over to our high-end wide receiver. And again, a lot of guys to consider here. Keenan Allen is out there. He has potentially a good matchup where more so he's going to be needed in this game as the Chargers take on the Packers, and the Packers are going to put some points on the board. We talked about Tyler Lockett. Liked him a lot. This is a game we said before where it's probably going to be Russ Wilson throwing the ball, as the Tampa Bay secondary isn't as good, but their rush defense is good.
Right.
So, could at $7,500, he's not, super, super high, but we expect him to have a potentially good day.
Yep.
We also looked at T.Y. Hilton. I think that there's a good matchup brewing against Pittsburgh. He was at $7,400. I always loved T.Y. Had a little bit of an off week last week, but he's for the most part fairly consistent. And $7,400, you're talking about 15 points. Good potential he could get you there. Adam Thielen's on this list at $7,100, and I love that. I just don't know if he's going to be playing. We didn't know.
Yep.
And even if he is he going to be fully back to health? And we're already playing Dalvin Cook as our top-end running back. Not to say you can't do a stack, but you can. So we tinkered around with it a little bit. The middle-range guys we saw that kind of were of interest were just a little higher price than we really would like. And one of the top receivers out there in price, we just couldn't pass up the potential matchup, and it's on the flip side of that game with Seattle and Russ Wilson and Tyler Lockett we were talking about, and that's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last week, Mike Evans, unbelievable day. But you brought it up to me, Dave. What do we know about Evans?
Mike Evans seldom puts together back-to-back games like that. He's going to command a lot of attention because of that. Again, I believe that just like we all have recency bias, I believe defenses and NFL personnel people have recency bias, and we look to him to get a lot of coverage in this game. And just again, it's just Mike Evans. He's not a back-to-back kind of guy. He scores a lot of touchdowns. I was saying, this is a guy that could have like 15 touchdowns this year, and he might score them all in like 7 games. So it's just the way that he works. He has big explosive games. And just as an idea, and then kind of going back to Godwin's had 2 what I would consider poor games for him this year. And both of those games happen to be where Mike Evans scored multiple touchdowns. So other than that, if you look at 4 of his last 6 games, he has managed to go over 7 targets was his lowest. His lowest receiving yards was 121. He scored 5 touchdowns in those games, including 2 multi-touchdown games. And it's kind of one of those pick your poison, and we believe it's his turn in this one. And they're going to have to throw in this game. They're going to have to score some points.
Yep, I would agree with you. And I think he's teed up for another nice game. A couple things to keep in mind. Last week, the Falcons with Matt Schaub at the helm, they're down by, 20-something points at half. They come out and they come storming back, still in a losing effort, but, they were able to throw on the Schaub.
Huge numbers.
Was able to throw on the secondary. Shaquille Griffin, who's very good, should be out there. We know might be bad. I think he'll be out there. They've also got Trey Flowers.
He's banged up and
he's banged
questionable.
Up now. And then they've got Jamal Taylor who covers the slot. Now here's the thing: they won't travel. Seattle's corners won't travel. So, but you got 2 guys. I mean, you could line up Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and flip-flop them either side. I think that Shaq Griffin is the better corner than Trey Flowers overall. Yep. I mean, he is. He's younger. He's Pro Football Focus has him listed at the number 9 overall corner to Trey Flowers at 92.
Yep.
Jamar Taylor is in the slot, and not that Godwin plays out of the slot the whole time, but he could very easily drop in there if they need him to and strap him against someone like that. The one thing, I think he'll I don't know how much time he got last week. I assume we'll get more this week. Quandre Diggs was brought over in a trade with the Lions, so he is a part of that defense.
Yeah, he's
now.
Still a little banged up, though, too.
He is. And then they've got the other guy, what's his name, Leho or whatever. I think he's another safety or corner. He's banged up. Bradley McDougal at safety's banged up. Lano Hill. He's another guy. I think he's a corner or safety. So the point is they're not deep in their secondary right now. They can't afford another injury, and I just feel like it's going to be that week where Godwin's been doing what he's been doing all year.
Yep.
He's one of the highest ranked overall projected for the week, and we like it. So at 8,200, we're going to slot him in. So we will review. High-end running back was Dalvin Cook at $9,000. High-end wide receiver was Chris Godwin, $8,200. Low-end wide receiver was Deontay Johnson at $5,000. Low-end running back was Jamal Williams at $5,400. So now we have $32,400 to play with, roughly a hair under $6,500 a position.
Yep.
So those are our high 2, our low 2, high-end values at one wide receiver, running back, low-end values cost at wide receiver, running back.
And we stayed roughly right around the average salary allotted per slot, which is, not necessarily you want to do that, to some degree, because this is where, you want to be able to have some flexibility in all the positions, because what we've got left is basically we can fill with any position at this point, some versatility. I will say, after this point, this is where things got interesting and challenging, because we mentioned the lack of really value that we saw in some of the low end that we normally see. Some of our middling players actually were priced what we thought was pretty high. So we had to get creative. And after kind of talking, we were talking, not looking really at this too much. We talked for a little while. I kind of got the idea that we were going to have to sacrifice a position in order to find high value in other places. And what I mean by sacrificing a position is taking somebody that we're not necessarily in love with, and look at them and we're trying to get one position back to that value of 2-1. So again, we didn't start there, but we kind of just found as we started maneuvering our options here to do that. So
now we will move into a lineup build action for y'all that we will play on this FanDuel main slate Sunday. And again, we may play one of the $1 games, $2 games, may throw it in a couple of different games, the same lineup, may make a couple shifts, use this lineup and just switch a few little things around. But we will play this lineup. It's up to you how much you want to spend if you choose to do so as well.
So we'll kind of start with where we were in agreement at. So not necessarily the order we went in, but we did it because as we went through all the positions, we were having, like we said, we kind of were not battling with each other, but battling with some concerns. So we went and looked at defenses. The defense that you want this week, I think, just from a straight-up standpoint.
We looked at Buffalo.
Yep.
I like that deal against Washington, especially with Dwayne Haskins.
Right, but they're 5,000.
And they're the highest.
Yep.
And, some weeks we do that. We have with the Patriots, but more times than not, we're trying to find a less expensive defense that might do us some justice.
Yeah, so we kind of went through some of these. A game we talked quite a bit about. We talked about even the Jets at Miami. It's going to be a rainy game at this point, and so that could keep some of the scoring down and taking the Jets D against Miami.
I initially had Phillies D slotted in there.
Yep, that was another one we looked at was Philadelphia and Chicago. Chicago's offense has been pretty poor.
It's in Philly. Yeah. They do have the woes in secondary, but they do have a pretty stout front.
Yep.
And, a few weeks ago, they had their defense had a phenomenal game. So I was kind of on that, expecting that maybe to happen again. It was against the Jets.
Yeah, so right now you got a Jets team that honestly their defense is not great.
They just lost Leonard Williams.
Yeah, and it's against Miami. We're not really sure where everybody's head's at following all the chaos that's happened with all the players that were on the block. So we felt there was a little bit of risk there. And we looked at the Philadelphia and Chicago. Obviously it makes sense with as bad as Chicago's offense had played, but Chicago also had 4 red zone possessions inside the 10, or inside the red zone, where they came away with 2 field goals, 2 field goals, 1 touchdown, and no points. So the point being is if they could convert those, that could make Philadelphia a little bit less attractive. So we kind of kept looking down. Minnesota, KC, Minnesota's D is good, but KC put up some points with Matt Moore, so there's some concern there. We jumped down to the Cleveland Browns playing at Denver.
They're $4,300.
Yeah,
and the lowest price defense is the Redskins at 3,000. So they're right in the middle there.
Yeah, in the middle pack. But what we talked about, and Bill mentioned it already, is Denver and what are they going to be able to do? Now without Flacco, they're already a poor offense with Flacco, and now without him and a guy that's a journeyman is probably being nice. Coming in there, and they're going to bring hell at this guy. And Cleveland's defense, while they've played way below expectation, is still got a lot of talent on it and can still rush the passer. So we just feel like this is an opportunity for them to exploit that and to really take advantage of it. And at $4,300, we save $700 on the top end defense that we really liked.
Out a 9 spot, and that might be asking a lot, but. Here's a couple other things I want. With the backup quarterback, the Brandon Allen kid, in my mind, the easiest thing to do is run the ball. And I said I thought Royce Freeman was the better back. They do have Philip Lindsay. He'll get some. But by no means are they dealing with Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley.
It's not a prolific
Ezekiel
rushing
Elliott.
attack. Yeah.
And the Browns overall are 12th against the rush.
Yep.
So, And here's the last thing. To win in especially in the tournaments, because this will be a bigger, this won't be the biggest tournament, but it is a tournament, you do have to have some standout where others might not play it. Yep. I think there will be a lot more people than usual, obviously, on Cleveland this weekend. But I also think it could be a random shot where we can save money but really have some upside.
And understand, Buffalo's going to get a lot of players because it's really only a $700 difference. So, again, that little bit of contrarian could make the difference, and it's where you spend that other $700 that really makes the difference.
And Baker Mayfield just went off on reporters because he feels like their play is poor. So, yeah!
Maybe a little bit of motivation, though.
All right, so we're going to drop the Cleveland Brown D in at $4,300. Now we are at 28-1 with left, and it actually boosts that was just a hair under $6,500 per position average up to a hair over $7,000 per position average.
Yep. So then we went to quarterback, and Russell Wilson, good play, but at $8,600, I don't know that we're not guaranteed to get that value back on it. They have Mahomes listed, but he's not playing, so that doesn't make sense. So we kind of got into a mix of a few guys, and what we felt was like the next level was an Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford scenario, and then I felt like there was a drop-off. I don't know if you'd agree, but then we also looked at, and we like Kirk Cousins and Josh Allen.
Yep.
Beyond that, you got guys like Winston, and, we're playing Godwin, so it's not a bad play, but there is that concern with Winston, the propensity to have turnovers, and that could hurt us in this, so that kind of pulled him off. And then we really got into the next levels, like Jacoby Brissett and David Carr. There's really not a lot of value there versus what you're paying for. So... Again, so we kind of battle back and forth. The challenge with Aaron Rodgers, again, obviously he's a good play no matter what, is they can go to the ground.
And this could be that game. I mean, he's had 2 phenomenal weeks. Not that he can't do it again, but a team like, the Chargers, I could see them, going to the ground, it working, and them just sticking with it. And him, not throwing as much as he has been.
Yeah, and then you get into Kirk Cousins again. Remember, our belief in Dalvin Cook was based upon the fact that they would run the ball quite a bit. Cousins appealing, but not. It just didn't strike us. The thing with Stafford, and this is the direction that we went in, was
for a second week in a row.
Yep, and he's not going to be
last week.
Yep, and he's not going to be a bad play going forward. Period, because. We believe Detroit is now, with the injuries at running back, their inability to pick up another running back, that they are going to be destined to throw. And Stafford has shown an ability to throw. I feel like his floor on this is very, very low. Very, very high. His floor on this with a high upside. So we went that route at $7,900. Again, we've got that opportunity with that offense. I mean, Stafford's generally not a multi-pick guy. His matchup against Oakland is pretty good. I mean, they're getting a little bit of a pass rush now, but they've got a rookie at one corner. They traded away another corner, and so they've got that, and that's an opportunity. So this is the way they're going to have to win. So predictability was huge for us on this Stafford pick. There's no real worry that the game could go more of a ground game in this scenario.
Yep. I like everything you have to say, buddy. So we'll slide him in. $7,900 for Stafford leaves us with $20,200, $6,733 per position. Where are we going next?
Why don't you? I've been kind of alluding to this over and over again about this idea that we had to kind of mix and match with the players, and these last 3 guys, really. All
right, let's go with the other receiver.
Yeah,
okay?
these are the guys we toyed with a little bit due to the cost. Go ahead, go to the other receiver. Tell me who we got.
All right, so for wide receiver, we wanted to see what we had in the middle range, in the 7,000 range, or below. Again, we mentioned T.Y. Hilton. We mentioned Keenan Allen as the rain picks up behind us. Don't mind that. We looked a little further down. We liked a little John Brown. for Buffalo
Yep.
at $6,200 going against the Washington Redskins. But as we started to build out projected point, receptions, yardage, potential to score based on what we've seen, based on the matchups, we were feeling again the stack between Stafford and Golladay as we did last week. It paid off last week. At $7,600, it was really tough to find guys where we thought there would be that 2 times the value they could hit that and it be their floor.
Yep.
And so 15 points out of Golladay, we started averaging up. Very good chance that, I think on the low end, we felt he could probably get closer to like an 18 or 19. We even went up to 20 as we started piecing it together. Again, based on the number of targets, based on the number of receptions, yardage, touchdown potential, and the matchup that they're going to face. And the Oakland secondary is, it's not that great. They have Darryl Worley. They have LaMarcus Joyner and Travion Mullen going into his second game. Joyner usually covers the slot anyways. So that would be the other Marvin Hall. And then you got, Worley on one side and Travion Mullen on the other, neither of which, I think Travion Mullen could be really good, but he's young, and Worley is good, but he doesn't, scare me tremendously in terms of cornerback, wide receiver matchup. So, long story short, we dropped Kenny Golladay in at $7,600. Leaves us $12,600 to play with, $6,300 for a tight end and running back on average. And we got a little stack going once again, Matt Stafford, Kenny Golladay.
Yep.
So you go next. You want to hit tight end? Let's hit tight end.
Yeah. All right. So we actually kind of battled more with the flex position. We considered Darren Waller in this, but what happened with that? And Darren Waller, I think, is a very good play in this matchup. But the challenge with this was where it left us in the flex position, which is the last position. Well, we really weren't seeing anything with some strong value. And this is kind of where we got to that point where we said, look, if we're going to have to do a trade-off and take somebody we're not really in love with, where's the position to do that?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at if we had dropped Waller in, we could have gone and tried to get Miles Sanders in Philly, Mark Walton, Ronald Jones, Damian Williams, Alexander Madison. I mean, do those excite you?
No, I mean, they're guys that are going to get touches but going to struggle because the cost of those guys, is still pretty high because that's the high end of what's left, to get production that you're not going to have. So we kind of looked around. And we went down a little bit lower. We've kind of come away from the Hawkinson experiment in Detroit. It seems like they have a 3-headed monster in the passing game, really maybe a 4-headed monster, but he doesn't figure to be part of that at this point.
Yeah.
So we looked at some other guys. We looked at even Ryan Griffin. He had a really big day, but again, the weather, like what we're experiencing right now, is going to be pretty rough in Miami, and the passing games could be impacted. And we remember that we were hit by that with the Washington-San Francisco game.
Yeah.
So looking around, we looked at Goddard for Philadelphia. Now, he's the second tight end in this, but Zach Ertz has been almost non-existent compared to what he's been.
Outscoring him fantasy-wise.
Yeah, so right now we may not get this 2-to-1 on this particular position, but we figured at $5,000 it allows us to go after a better matchup, a juicier flex player, because the tight end position is really getting beyond probably 5 or 6 guys is a pretty significant roll of the dice, and you're going to pay heavy on that tight end position for that without the guarantee of any of them getting into the end zone, and that's the challenge. So
and the other thing with it is this. I mean, Goddard, the last 3 weeks has seen – from 3 weeks ago to now, 8 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets consecutively, has had 5 receptions, 4 receptions, 3 receptions consecutively.
Yep.
So I think
and 2 scores in that time.
Yeah, and 2 scores in that time and had 48 yards, 69 yards, 22 yards. So, I mean, I think we worst case scenarioed it. We were thinking maybe around 4 receptions, maybe around 40 yards, and we averaged, like, if he was going to score maybe, I think, 4 out of 6 points, so 40%, maybe even 3.
Yep.
But if he had 3, if we give him 3 there, the 4 receptions, that's 2 points in this because you get half point. And then the 40 yards, that's 2 plus the 4 for the 40 yards. That's 6 plus the 3 is 9. He's almost hitting half the value.
Yeah, and here's the thing is,
Or
on
2
top
times value, sorry.
if he happens to do more, this is a contrarian pick that you're not going to have a lot of people on likely.
Unless
so
recency bias plays in. But I agree with you, and it's against the Chicago Bears defense. So, and I think in a lot of people's heads, they are still a really good defense.
They are, but tight end happens to be a position where they are getting the ball moved on them. So, and if you think about it, if they do play against the tight end, they're probably going to go Ertz, which is going to leave him to be able to make some plays.
Yep. So, and in doing that, you just said it. By doing that, by putting him into the fold at $5,000, that leaves us $7,600 for that flex position, which opens up a world of options.
Yep.
Because before we were very limited.
And so in this, the probably more enticing as a collection of options was in the receiving core. But we also look at it and go, a running back is going to tend to touch the ball a lot more. And so we kind of looked, is there a value running back in this that we really believe in? Because you got guys out there that are available like Lockett, Hilton, Keenan Allen is out there, James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, Robinson, and then Josh Jacobs. So in there, you've only got 2 running backs available. You got James Conner, who's been running well, but has had an injury that, and the return of Jalen Samuel will also add to that mix. So we kind of looked at those receivers. Allen Robinson, again, good matchup, but with poor quarterbacking. Keenan Allen has struggled to really get going and is questionable. T.Y. Hilton's playing Pittsburgh and their defense has gotten better, and he's questionable. So, that may slow them down a bit. Again, Lockett might be a good play in this scenario. But again, we went back to and looked at Josh Jacobs. And the interesting thing about Josh Jacobs, and I go back and use the Green Bay game because it's near, a little recency there, but it makes sense, is he has continued to carry the ball even when the team has gotten down. They, as we said about Gruden, he commits to the run, where many teams still go away from the run, especially if they're getting scored on. Even in that game against Green Bay, where Rodgers was just out of his mind, he still got his. Now, he took an injury last week, and his touches were down. He was productive, but his touches were down. He had 15 carries for 66 yards. He didn't have any receptions. That's really kind of where I would say his floor is from an injury standpoint. There's not a lot of talk about his injuries right now. And even at that, 16 carries in this is 8 points on the carries. And then it's 66 yards, another 6.6 points. So you're talking about 14.6 points. He's right there at double his value with another week to get healthy.
Yeah. And look, this is an offense that, they can score points. It's in a game that, again, Detroit, I think it could be like last week with the Giants. There were points put on the board, and between him and Waller, they've been rocking and rolling.
Yeah, and Detroit's run defense is not strong. They've still got secondary there, so they're going to play against that. I think this is an opportunity for them, and if Oakland is able to set the tone in this game, then that could be an opportunity for them to run the ball consistently. So with his floor already being double the value, we just felt like this was a home run. And if you look at some of his other games when he was healthy, he will far surpass that number in this, getting a couple of catches, potentially getting a score, running for 100-plus yards. I mean, there's all kinds of advantages to this play with Josh Jacobs.
Very good, sir. So this is actually going to leave us with $400 left, and we'll leave it like that.
Yep.
If you do so choose, you want to tinker with it, usually we might try some other deals. But we'll do a quick rundown. Matt Stafford at quarterback. You got Dalvin Cook and Jamal Williams at running back. You got Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, and Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers at wide receiver. Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles at tight end. Josh Jacobs, the running back for the Oakland Raiders at the flex. And the Cleveland Browns defense, leaving us with $400. Lock it in.
Have some fun with this. I hope these things help give you some good food for thought. Build your lineup. Go win some money.
Yep, and like I said, if something comes up, we'll put some comments out underneath this post on the Facebook, making any switches that due to news that might come up. But hopefully it'll pay out like it did last week, and we'll continue on this roll. Thank you for listening. This is Gridiron 360. Oh, no. We'll see you next time on the Gridirons. Have a wonderful day.
Life's the same. I'm moving in stereo. Life's the same, except for my shoes. Life's the same. You're shaking like tremolo. Life's the same. It's all inside.